Hi, everybody. Welcome once again. I was going to actually wait a little bit and record my next video, especially since I have a haircut coming up pretty soon. Oh, this COVID do. It's no good. But today is the day because today is the memorial for the Jehovah's Witnesses. For anyone that was not a witness, to explain really briefly what the memorial is, this is their biggest day of the year. They do not celebrate Easter. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate any holiday, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, Halloween, because all of those are rooted in pagan traditions, which they're not wrong about that. So instead of celebrating Easter, they celebrate what would be considered kind of the Passover. So the night that Jesus died, because he commanded in the Bible to his apostles at the dinner before his death, he said, "Keep doing this in remembrance of me." And so the witnesses take that very literal. So on Nisan 14 every year on the Jewish calendar, they have that annual meeting. It's normally pre-COVID, open to the public, and that's when they work really hard at getting a big fervor going and inviting as many people as they possibly can. That's always the highest attended meeting of the year because you have people who maybe aren't active anymore, or family members who aren't witnesses, and then people that are studying with witnesses. That's the day that they all come to the special meeting that night. They have a discourse talking about the importance of Jesus' ransom sacrifice, as well as, how Jehovah was so wonderful for sending his son to earth to die. And then they pass unleavened bread and wine, but you don't drink or eat them. The only people that are allowed to do that are the 144,000. Again, those group of people that believe they're going to heaven. So it's very, very rare that you see a witness partake. It's for that elite group that, are scattered all over. So this is kind of a trigger day for a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, because so many of us, this was like hype day when you were a witness. A lot of us got new outfits. You really did this big push in your door-to-door ministry to get people there. It was just the Super Bowl. So for a lot of us, this is kind of a triggering day because they put so much emphasis on this that even once you're out, as long as you're not an apostate, you still oftentimes receive the invitations. Even people who are disfellowshipped will, people who their family members don't ever speak to them or haven't spoken to them in years will still get an invitation to come to this because they regard it as being their most holy night. Because of that, I was going to hold off a little bit on making this specific video. I had in my mind a very chronological way that I wanted to do this, but I woke up this morning kind of bolt straight up in bed, and I thought, this is the best day to do it. This is the best day to whistle blow and memorial free, gonna spill the tea. So I'm going to go back and say one quick thing again to reiterate that I covered in my first video. My dad was not an active witness for most of my life, and so my mom was the one that was the spiritual head of our family. So when I was 6 years old, I had an older sister, so I'm the youngest of 7, and I had an older sister, and she left the house when she was, I think, 20 or 21. She was the first one of us that broke away from the witnesses. She did not officially disassociate and she did not get disfellowshipped. But she did make it clear that she didn't really want to have anything to do with the witnesses. And she struck out on her own. She rented an apartment with a friend from work. And she was working full time and like just starting to live her life. And it was just, I believe, a few weeks after she had left. And she was killed in a motorcycle accident. She was with her friend who, or a friend, who of course, was worldly, which that's the term that witnesses use when they refer to anybody who's not a witness. They're worldly people. So she was with this guy who was a friend of hers, a group of people, and he was intoxicated and he was driving the motorcycle and she was on the back, no helmet. They had a bad accident and she died. She was taken to the hospital, and she lived for a little bit, but ultimately, she obviously didn't make it. I don't remember her extremely well, but I do remember her. And I'm bringing this up because for a couple of reasons. First, she was like really brave to do what she did, to leave and strike out on her own. Secondly, my mom and dad had lost their first baby at birth. It's a story for another day. So my mom, I don't think ever fully recovered from that exactly either. So losing her grown daughter was really, really hard on her. And she was devastated. But at the same time, unfortunately, because my sister had made those choices to leave and then ended up being in that accident with a worldly guy, she was kind of used as this is what could and does happen to you if you leave the witnesses, because there's nothing good out there. So she was kind of like the worst case scenario. My family was so excited about the idea of a resurrection, though, that honestly, rarely was my sister talked about. I think everyone was so heartbroken about it that it was very painful for them to talk about her, because that's grief. So I think a lot of people in my family kind of shoved it down and ignored it because they were just looking forward to that day that she would, Armageddon would come and she would be resurrected. So I, unlike a lot of people who lose someone, I was not raised with a lot of stories about my sister. I was raised with some, and I have my own memories, but she wasn't like kept alive like a lot of people do with their loved ones who pass. So that was just a really challenging time. And it's not until I've fully woken up that I realize the way that my family dealt with her passing is maybe not completely normal. And I realized that a lot of my fear, once I was disfellowshipped the first time, because I didn't really want to be disfellowshipped the first time, I was really terrified. I had those Armageddon terrors, but I was really terrified that I was going to have the same fate she did. I just kept thinking like any day something terrible is going to happen to me because I'm out of the organization and I'm not being protected. So it's an awful, awful burden to carry. That was a big change too, because that was the first year after Jennifer, my sister's name, after Jennifer died, that I started being molested. And so I that went on for a good 3 years, on and off through those 3 years by the same person. And I never really said anything. So if we fast forward to when I'm 14. So this starts happening when I'm 6 until I'm about 9. I get baptized at 11, and then pioneering at 12. Okay, so that's that. When I was 12, sorry, I'm going to put this in here. When I was 12, we moved from my house that I had been when I was born. Like, that's where I grew up. We moved from there to a different house. And I remember sitting in the back of the moving vehicle, and I was like sobbing and screaming out the window because I told my mom that when my sister was resurrected, she wouldn't know where to find us. Sorry. So that's the level of like trauma that the cult provides, and that kind of like warped brain where you're so focused on something that's not real that it literally it hurts like day to day, because you're just always waiting for this reality that isn't going to happen. But then you're also when life changes or things happen, it like your equilibrium is just thrown off because it goes against what you have thought and been prepared for. So that was a really, really tough thing. So when I was 14, my older brother, so I have two brothers, one that was just before me and then one that was older than him. The brother, the oldest of the two, was never very nice growing up. But he was an egomaniac, and he was extremely prideful. My mom actually used to kind of jokingly refer to the two of them as like Jacob and Esau, because my older brother was just quick-tempered and like egotistical to the max. And he really wanted to be a ministerial servant, and he knew that my dad was smoking while my dad was, that's part of the reason he was a semi-driver long haul, because he was gone all the time because he could do that and kind of get away with, not being caught. But we knew as a family, just you can't totally hide it. So my brother wanted to be the big spiritual hero, and he turned my dad into the elders. So the next time my dad was back on the road, or from the road when he was back home, the elders wanted to meet with him, and they met with him, and I guess, my dad was just like, he wasn't a liar, and he wasn't a bad guy, and so he just was like, yeah, it's it's a habit, and I have continued to do it, and whatever he said in his judicial meeting, I don't know. So a judicial meeting or a committee meeting is when generally three elders meet with you if you've committed some wrongdoing, and they pepper you with questions on all the details of it, and then you leave for a little bit, and then they meet together and decide what your punishment is going to be. So they decided to disfellowship my dad for smoking cigarettes. So my dad accepted the punishment, and I remember I was standing in the parking lot of the Kingdom Hall. Kingdom Hall are the buildings that the witnesses use for their meetings, for their worship service. And my mom told me that the elders made that decision, and I was just like, devastated. I was devastated. Not only was I devastated because I was sure now that my dad was going to die at Armageddon, but it's embarrassing. Like, he already wasn't around very much, and now if he was around, decided to come to the meeting, he was going to be that person that was like with us and everybody was going to avoid us and him like the plague. And then also I knew, I'm like a young teenager. I'm already awkward. And like, I knew like my friends, right, either weren't going to come over anymore at all because now we have this like stain on the family, or, for sure they couldn't come over on the weekends that my dad would end up being home. So it was all this combination of things. And then I thought to myself, then I was in this like phase from the age of 14 to 16 where I knew when I was younger I had been sexually abused. I never forgot it or anything. But I never really knew if that's what it was. I didn't know like if it was wrong because you didn't really have those conversations back then very often. I mean, it was just very sparse when anything like that was ever talked about. So I was babysitting for kind of, money on the side when I was pioneering. So I was 14 and I was babysitting. And I was watching a talk show. It was like a Sally Jesse Raphael or something. And they had survivors of sexual assaults on there. And one of them was talking about how when she was 9, she was molested by a teenager, by a boy who is 7 years older than her. And like my ears perked up because that was the age difference. And so I like turned it up and like paid attention. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. Like, this is what happened to me. Something happened to me. I didn't ask for this. I didn't do anything wrong. So it took me a while though from hearing that, because I think I was like 14 or 15 maybe. And then, we have all this going on. My dad's disfellowshipped. And I'm 16. And it was like a Sunday, I think. And we are driving home, and my older brother who had turned my dad in, is driving the other direction. He like flags us down. He tells my mom he was just appointed as a ministerial servant. And I remember like a slow motion movie. My mom said, "Oh, how?" And he said, "Well, they just took me in the back room and they said, is there anything on your conscience that prevents you from accepting this assignment or position or whatever as ministerial servant?" And he said, "Nope." And they assigned, so he's like, they're going to announce it on Thursday. And everybody's all happy. It was this big celebration, and I was like getting sicker and sicker to my stomach. So we go home, and then it was the next day. It was a Monday, and we were going in field service. So we met with the group of people, because so there's like a designated day, time, and place. This is all pre-pandemic, that you would meet for field service. So whoever wanted to go out that day, you met in one place. You had a short little mini meet, like a Bible-based meeting. And then, you divide it up who's going to go with who out door to door. And then you have a prayer and you leave. So we had that on Monday morning. My mom and my sister and I were all, because we were all pioneering together, so we're at this meeting. And I'm 16 then. And we leave the meeting for field service, and I'm walking down the sidewalk, and I just dropped my bag, and I started just like crying, just like full, like couldn't control myself, sobbing. And my sister came up to me and she was like, "What is wrong?" And I just said, "My brother molested me like when I was little for years." And she's like, "Oh no, oh no, oh no." And she just like got scooped me up and like dragged me to her car, and then she was like waving my mom down because my mom was like in another group. And so my mom, left, and we went down the road to where my sister lived, to her house. And I just like, told him everything. That, when it started, kind of when and how it stopped. So it was from the time I was about 6 to 9, and he's 7 and some months older than me. And my mom was like totally in my corner. I mean, she totally believed me because, my mom had gone through that when she was young, non-JW family. But anyways, so she was like an automatic kind of victim's advocate. As a matter of fact, there were a few other women in congregations, surprised, that also had, been molested by their like elder dads. And they went to my mom. My mom actually helped one of them to go to the elders and do the whole committee thing. But anyways, so she was like totally in my corner. And I look back on it, she was like so strong because, she was devastated. Like, it's her kids, both of her kids. So like, what do you do as a mom? But she just said, we'll handle this. And she called my dad, and my dad was on the road, and he just said, get him out of the house. I don't really, it's a good thing that I'm not there. I don't know what I would do. Like, just get him out. So, of course, my mom's also like, we have to call the elders. So, which, I mean, sure, 'cause that was my like final, that's what the straw that broke the camel's back was, like the whole fact that he'd just been appointed a ministerial servant. So I was like, okay, we can do that. And so she went home that night, and she by herself, and she confronted my brother. My brother was like, yep, didn't deny it, blah blah blah. I go to the elders. We call the elders. I go to the elders. I'm 16. I've never like dated anybody, held hands, like nothing. And I'm sitting in front of these 3 guys by myself, and like having to give all the gory details of what I could remember through the years. And I'm just like, I'm mortified. And I don't remember a lot of the details, except that I felt like I was a robot that had been unplugged and was like starting to go haywire, because you're raised to be like the perfect witness. Like, you have to smile all the time and be on all the time. You can't act like you're upset or depressed. So, and plus, I was a pioneer, so there was this pressure, even though I was super young, to like be even more like perfect. So when I'm sitting in this meeting and I'm like falling apart and I'm like panicking, part of my brain is also telling me to like calm down and get it together, because you can't do this. It's embarrassing. This is not what you're supposed to do as a witness. You have to like, so it's like my brain was going haywire. So looking back on it, I don't remember a lot of the actual details of the meeting, because A, I was just mortified, and B, I'm traumatized, but then also I was just like conflicted in my head, like what to say, to talk about, how to present myself. So I go through all this rough, terrible stuff. I leave the meeting, and then they meet with my perpetrator. He is just like, yeah, whatever she said, that's what happened. I mean, I don't know exactly what he said, but that's from the gist, from what I heard later, that's basically what he said. And so we go home. Of course, he's gone. He also moved like out of the state really quickly. I think he went and stayed with friends for a little bit, and then he was gone and in another state like within weeks, just gone. So then we go to the meeting, and they announce that my brother has been publicly reproved. So I'm there with my family in the middle of the Kingdom Hall, and he's not there because he got to just, right? He had to leave. So it's just like me and my family. They announce that he's publicly reproved, which that means reproved just means that, like, you did something, but nobody knows what, that you could have gotten disfellowship for, but you were sorry. You were, like, super, super, super sorry. And so you just can't comment at the meetings anymore or give talks for a little bit. But everybody can still talk to you. You still associate with everybody. You still go in field service, still. And most of the time when people are reproved, people like rally around them because they're like, oh, you need support. We love you because you made a mistake. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, my dad was disfellowshipped for smoking cigarettes. And my brother is reproved for molesting me for 3 years, 2 of which he was baptized. So, then after the meeting, I have all of his friends and all my friends, all these people coming up and asking how he is. And where is he? And it's so sorry to hear that happened. And we hope he's okay. And we hope he's doing better. And I'm just like, yeah, like just trauma after trauma. So then, and I guess that's the other thing. This wasn't like, the reason why, I guess, when it was found out by some people, wasn't a big surprise because I guess he, like, was kind of handsy with girls on and off. I mean, he dated, like, he was a serial dater, an engager. He got engaged I don't know how many times and then broke up with the girl. But, there were girls that, like, reported him, like, being inappropriate. But I'm sure I was his only victim. So we go home and, like, we're trying to get on with our lives, but also my mom has found a therapist who's also a witness, but, it was something. So she, like, I do my phone therapy sessions, and the very first one I had was, like, a week after not even a week after all this broke. I have this first initial call with this therapist. It's gut-wrenching. I have to go back through and, like, tell everything all over again. And I hang up the phone and I'm, like, wrecked. I'm crying. I'm sick. I wasn't eating and sleeping right. And my mom's like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. It's going to get better. And then she's like, but, remember, you have that study tonight with the CO's wife. So I was conducting a Bible study at that time, and the circuit overseer was in town, and his wife was supposed to go with me on this Bible study. So I hang up the phone from this therapy call. I go wash my face, put on some clothes, go drive, pick up the circuit overseer's wife, conduct a Bible study out of the Live Forever book, drive back home, drive my circuit overseer's wife back, the whole time, like, chit-chatting with her, acting like everything's fine, and then head back and, get back home at, like, and I'm just, I don't know. It's like, it was just insanity. And so all that happens in the meantime, my brother is relocated to another state, settling in fine, has a job, new hall, new friends. It's like 2 weeks after this, I'm at the meeting, and one of the elders that was actually on the committee, so this is an elder that knows all the gory details of what has happened to me, comes up to me and says, oh, so I hear so-and-so's moved. How's he settling in his new place? What? Like, everything, and you're asking me? So I just like, I'm 16, right? And I have all this on me. So I just like turn and walk. I just left. So then it was like 2 or 3 days after that we got a call, and my mom was super excited. She was like, oh, the elders want to have a shepherding call, which was really exciting for us because they had never had one. And I will say that they make a big deal, and they talk about how they do these shepherding calls, and they're supposed to do them annually. They never, ever do them, ever. I mean, they, like, the whole time in my entire life, we had 2, ever. And it was always, like, something this magnitude. So we're excited, right? My mom, like, bakes pies, and we have tea, and 2 elders come over, and we are just ready for this night of encouragement and spiritual fortification. They come with their Bibles, and they sit, and their topic for the shepherding call was the importance of forgiveness. And they used the half an hour to go into great detail about why it's important, because Jesus forgave us, so we need to forgive anyone for anything they might have done, and if not, it could mean our everlasting damnation. And then one of the elders fell asleep halfway through, and that was that. So within I'll say 4 weeks, but I don't think it was 4 weeks. I think it was like 3 weeks. I had basically a nervous breakdown, confessed to everything that happened. He's confronted, kicked out of the house. Gory detail, elders meeting. He's publicly reproved. I'm bombarded with the how, why from all the people we know. Elder asked me how he's doing. I have to go on a Bible study with the circuit overseer's wife. Start my first therapy. Elders, shepherding call. Still pioneering. This is real bad. So, last I knew, I do know for sure he's married and has 3 kids and is an elder now. And there was a Watchtower article years ago that said if you were ever accused of any crime against a child, that you could not hold a position. But I guess the loophole is that since I was disfellowshipped, and since he was probably real sorry, that's fine. He can totally be an elder. So that's that part of my life story thus far. I have a lot more that I'll get into later, but I just felt like, I want people to know that this organization does not look out for kids, for young people, for women. It does not really care about what's right and wrong, honestly. It cares about what is going to further them, what's going to make them look better. Butts in the seats. So if they can get, if they can make sure the man is taken care of, he's going to get married, he's going to be head of his house, he's going to be able to have offspring and raise more people to be witnesses, which is exactly what happened, right? I'm one person, I'm gone and I'm out. But that's a family, that's 5 people now that are still witnesses. So it's all very, very hard. And I think the toughness of it too is just that to this day, coming to grips that, like, my dad was a pariah. My family never respected him. And there was always something to pick apart. He wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. He wasn't always there when he should have been. But he was not a terrible person. And he provided for us and took care of us. And he was a good person. And he was disfellowshipped and made to feel like he had no hope for a resurrection, that he was, beneath the worm in the ground. And you have a child molester who was baptized, who was able to literally just pop over to another state and go on and live his life. I mean, That's the kind of organization we deal with. And I am so embarrassed that it took me so bleepity bleep long to fully wake up and to hold all this accountable. And it was a challenge. Like, I struggled for years with all this. I struggled to forgive. I did struggle with that. I struggled to ignore it after everything and just treat him like we were still related, but kind of arm's length. Because that organization does not allow you to have a voice and to say, like, I choose for this person to not be in my life, regardless. But I have made that choice. And it's the memorial today, and it's their most holy and sacred day, and I hope that this video of all videos is viewed and shared more than anything, and that people know they are a child molesting protective of the child molesters, happy to know that little kids die for refusal for blood because they're picking this cult over their own life and health. That is what this organization is. And shame on them. Shame on them. So that's it for today. I will make another video soon. I don't know how soon. That's a lot. Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry for the triggers. I tried to put the warnings out there before the clicking on the videos. I appreciate everybody's support so far and their kind words, and knowing that I have a community of supporters out there. We have each other that actually know what's right and wrong and will stick up for it, stand up for it, and honor the victims. So I appreciate you. And here's to better days ahead, just as we've already had since leaving that organization. And I'm going to take some advice and just sign off for now. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a wonderful cult-free day.